Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following all the news and rumors on the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. I'm Daemon Hatfield, and this week we're starting on the Xbox side of things because of the recent multiplayer tests they've been running for Halo Infinite. I'm joined as always by Ryan McCaffrey, hosted by IGN's Xbox Podcast Unlocked.
Good to see you, Damon.
As well. And also Stella Chung, who is also, as well as Ryan, been playing a lot of Halo Infinite multiplayer recently. Stella, welcome to the show.
I'm excited to be here.
So I think both of you have come away positive with what you played so far from the multiplayer in Halo Infinite, as I've heard from people all over that have been playing these tests. Ryan, can you sort of begin by sort of wrapping up your impressions so far?
Yeah, I will say I have not seen a truly harsh word spoken about this multiplayer. I mean, yeah, there are little things like weapon balance, this, that, but I have not seen any sentiment of this is bad, this is not good. Oh gosh, what have they done? None of that. It's been overwhelmingly positive, and it had to be. We've talked about this on Unlocked a lot over the last 6 years, but as we've waited between mainline Halo games, there's so much riding on Halo Infinite. This is a spiritual reboot of the series. There's a generation of gamers that have come up now that really don't have that attachment to Halo because it has been gone for a while. And the multiplayer landscape has changed so much with the rise of battle royales and free-to-play games, things like Fortnite, things like Apex Legends, et cetera, et cetera. And so Halo Infinite is kind of coming into that, having to prove itself all over again. And so far, so good. I mean, it feels incredible. It feels like Halo, but it feels fresh. It feels new. And for me, one of the high points, the maps, which I didn't really like in general in Halo 5, in what was an otherwise fantastic multiplayer game. The maps here are very distinctive. They have personalities. They play really well. So I'm pretty over the moon with this so far. I'm feeling really good, and I'm glad we've got another weekend to look forward to with big team battle this weekend.
So Ryan, in terms of how the Halo Infinite multiplayer feels, is there a classic Halo that it really reminds you of, or would you say it feels a little bit more modern?
It's tough to put a finger on that right now. I would say, I mean, for me, I think Halo 2 is the pinnacle of Halo multiplayer all time. That is up for very friendly debate in the community. A lot of people would argue 3. And there's certainly the purists that prefer 1, and 5's great. But I would say it's got more of a Halo 2 vibe to it, but with the equipment that factored in with Halo 3, which has kind of come together in a really, really slick way. And obviously you've got some modern updates from 5, things like sprinting and power sliding as well.
Sure. Now, Stella, what's your sort of history with Halo?
Newer player, which I think Ryan and I talked about this, the fact that I am very heavily ingrained in the different FPSs that are around right now in 2021 and in this atmosphere. I feel like playing Halo is kind of cool. So I started playing Master Chief Collection, and I played a few rounds of multiplayer in there. And this is definitely very different from the previous multiplayer games, at least the ones that I got to play. And I really like the modernized aspects of Halo Infinite. I feel like they did a really good job of balancing out keeping original Halo and modernized Halo so that people getting introduced to it could feel at home. And I think there's a lot of things that wouldn't have translated as well if, say, one of the previous Halo games multiplayer had released today, like with the lack of sprinting, the lack of sliding. I know a lot of people really, really appreciate that. And the fact that there is a ping system now in Halo Infinite. It's not the best, but it's there, which is very good. And I feel like that's the sort of quality of life thing that FPS games need now to survive in today's environment. Because ever since Apex Legends pulled out their ping system, a lot of gamers realized, well, how did we play games without this before? So it's stuff like that I feel like Halo Infinite has done a really good job of paying attention to. And the fact that this is going to be a live service game, I feel like our review in progress is pretty cool to look at because we can track the changes. We can see how well 343 Industries is going to be keeping track of, balance changes since it is a live service game. So they're constantly going to be tweaking things, maybe adding new weapons or maps. So I think, I don't know, as a new player to Halo, I really enjoyed it. And I think it's really fun, but it's also really cool to play this and then go back to the Master Chief Collection and see the differences. So
Sure. Yeah, sure. That's very cool that you're reviewing the multiplayer portion for IGN, and awesome that you get to jump in at this early stage with these multiplayer tests that they're running. Stella, you've been playing on PC?
Yes.
And then Ryan, you've been playing on Xbox Series X, correct?
Got to do it.
So they're testing it. They're testing on those two platforms. But Ryan, those aren't the only two platforms that they're running these tests on. Is that right?
Well, for now, yeah. I mean, you can play on Xbox One, and that's what's really interesting to me about this realization that after this weekend really crystallized is, Halo Infinite to me seems like the first major Xbox game where it's the execution of Microsoft's idea that, hey, this is their biggest game, the biggest thing in the Xbox portfolio, and you can play it on the Series X, the Series S, PC, or the Xbox One. And everybody's in there and playing together. And it is kind of a preview, I think, of what the future of gaming looks like on, or at least in the Xbox ecosystem. I was going to say on the Xbox platform, but that's totally not true. It's just the ecosystem now.
Sure. Does it concern you, Ryan, that you'd be playing on a console, playing against people on PC, or does the game separate you?
Stella and I were talking about this, about what really is the advantage anymore of gamepad versus mouse and keyboard, and I don't know. I did pretty well on the gamepad, and yeah, I mean, whether people are separated out into mouse and keyboard servers or gamepad servers. There's going to be enough of a player base there to make it happen because it's a free-to-play game. Microsoft's made what I think is an extremely wise decision in what we were talking about earlier of reintroducing Halo after such a long layoff. And here it is. It's just free on whatever platform you want to play. And if you're going to pay for Halo, it's going to be for the campaign. So, yeah, I think it's all going to work out from a sort of logistics technical perspective. And it's just really neat to see it actually, they're walking the walk now instead of just talking the talk with it.
So lots of positive impressions coming out of the multiplayer tests. We are still waiting to see this campaign mode, though. We haven't seen it since it was unveiled last year, I believe over a year ago now, when it was mixed results, I think is a fair way to say how it was received. Stella, what would you say is your sort of interest level in the campaign portion of Halo Infinite?
It's less. I'm less invested in it than multiplayer as of right now, but because I am actually playing through the entire collection currently. So once I get through that, then I think my interest will be more piqued with the story now. I am very. I know. I saw a lot of mixed reactions too. So I'm curious, Ryan, as someone who is so heavily invested in the story, how do you feel about it?
Well, I mean, it's that campaign reveal last year was disappointing. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. I mean, it's just a question. Some people were extremely just very devastated by what was shown, but more from a technical perspective than a gameplay perspective. And so they've had the time now to resolve that. We got a little kind of like a montage trailer at E3 that certainly looked a lot better. There's still just so much that's unknown about this campaign, which I don't have a problem with that. If you go back, if you look in Halo history, the Flood were never revealed before Halo 1 came out. The Arbiter being played. I realize I'm now ruining this for Stella, who's going through all of it. But,
Spoilers.
I'm sorry, Stella. I'm sorry.
I'm
for the
not
point of
listening, it's
discussion.
fine.
Just plug your ears. The Arbiter in Halo 2 wasn't revealed beforehand. There have been these. Secrecy has been a part of Halo campaigns for a while. And it's just, there is sort of that extra question mark here because it's completely rewriting the playbook for what a campaign is. And that might not turn out well, or it might be exactly the breath of fresh air that Halo needed. The air of mystery has a little extra, I guess, weight to it this time around than it has in the past. It's not just about keeping story stuff a secret. It's about, will this open world, open Halo ring concept work? And that still remains to be seen. And so I've said this before, but for me, I appreciate that 343 is trying to reinvent it and not just follow the same playbook that Bungie first wrote 20 years ago, for better or for worse. I mean, it may end up not being awesome. It may end up being my least favorite Halo. But maybe it gets up there and it's just the exact reinvention that the series needed, and it will stand up there with the very best of the Halo campaigns. I just don't know, and there's something a little exciting about that, but also kind of nerve-wracking. So we'll see how it shakes out.
Well, Stella, thank you so much for joining us for this episode. Halo Infinite is out December 8th, and here's hoping the campaign ends up being as fun as the multiplayer portion seems to be turning out. And now we are joined by Jonathon Dornbush, host of IGN's PlayStation podcast, Podcast Beyond. Jonathon, welcome to the show.
Beyond, good to be here.
And I believe you have a new PlayStation announcement to share with us. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. Just yesterday, as of this show airing, PlayStation announced they've acquired Bluepoint Games, the studio that most recently made Demon's Souls, the PS5 launch title, one of the first PS5 exclusives in general. And then previously before that had done Shadow of the Colossus remake on PS4, and then various other work.
Sure. Yeah. Gravity Rush remastered, going all the way back to God of War Collection on PlayStation 3, I believe. Very closely aligned with PlayStation over the years, although, fun fact, they did handle the Xbox 360 port of Titanfall. So, Jonathon, is this news surprising at all to you?
It's like when Insomniac, did one game with Xbox and then went back to PlayStation. No, it's very exciting for me. I think Demon's Souls and Shadow in particular showed the capabilities of what Bluepoint could do, because while those were obviously building on the backs of really acclaimed and beloved games, they were able to both modernize them, do so much original art and asset work, modernize the feel of the games enough to make it still feel just as fun as any of the other games, say, launching alongside Demon's Souls on the PS5. And, they've been a really talented team that sort of has had this progression. They originally started from former Retro Studios devs who had been working on Metroid Prime. So there's a long lineage of really, really talented and longtime developers at the studio. And so to see them kind of finally be part of the PlayStation Studios family officially, I think just means there's less worry for them about where their next project is going to be, where funding might be, the scope of things, resources. This just means they're within the studio's portfolio and can kind of just keep working on their own, and they're working on their own original content going forward.
So Bluepoint very closely aligned with PlayStation. Ryan, Xbox probably isn't losing out on too many future titles with this purchase, but what's your sort of take on this deal?
Yeah, it's not unexpected, given, as Jonathon pointed out, the history there. It's not. I mean, we've seen this before. Obviously, of course, Insomniac being the highest profile one with their long history with PlayStation, with that lone wonderful Sunset Overdrive exception.
Yeah.
Microsoft did this too with their acquisition spree. They picked up Playground, who they had worked with, since that studio's inception on Forza Horizon. They put a ring on it, made it official. And the same with Undead Labs as well, with State of Decay. They'd always worked together. So, just certifying these partnerships is not unexpected, and I'm sure there are a lot of good business reasons to do it, and just corporate stability reasons for the studios. But yeah, I mean, Sony now has a really talented group officially under its wing, where I am a little surprised, I will say, that they're going to be doing original work. I mean, good for them. They've earned the opportunity to do that. They've proven themselves with these remakes time and time again. So yeah, it'll be really great to see what they come up with as their own original title here.
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead, Jonathan.
I was going to say, I spoke to Marco Thrush, the president of Bluepoint, with Herman Hulst, the head of PlayStation Studios, and they talked a little bit about that, of how not only did it feel like a natural progression that as they've continued to take on bigger and larger projects and do more original work for them, even when they are remakes, this just felt like the natural place to go, especially for a team that has their origins in doing their own creative original content within gaming. But it's also something that Herman had pointed out when we spoke, that they also just have a lot of trust and goodwill, not just among the PlayStation players, but the PlayStation developers, because they have dealt with such beloved games, handled them well. And I think PlayStation is really just wanting to see what they can do with their own ideas.
I mean, I would expect that may have been a big part of the conversations during the acquisition talks. Is Bluepoint probably said, hey, if we get acquired by you, we don't want to just be your remaster and remake house until the end of time. We want a shot at our own game.
Yeah, very excited to see Bluepoint's next original creation. Thanks for that report, Jonathon. We have the results of our poll from last week, and this is an interesting one. We need to go over these results. These results need to be discussed. We asked you, what was your favorite PlayStation generation ever? And I kind of thought, the PlayStation 4 were coming right off the incredibly successful PlayStation 4 generation. If in nothing else but recency bias, I thought for sure PS4 would be on top. But no, it was the PlayStation 2. handily beat every other PlayStation generation with nearly 44% of the vote. PS4 came in at just about 22%. So PS2, widely considered, at least with the IGN audience, the favorite PlayStation generation console ever. Of course, it's the best-selling console of all time. I would chalk that up to it also being a very cheap DVD player. But I don't know. Ryan, I'll start with you because I saw you voicing your similar surprise at these results. Did you also think PS4 would come out on top?
No, I did. I will say I expected the PS2 to win, but I thought it would be neck and neck with the PS4
Gotcha.
because again, yeah, the PS4 wildly successful, incredible generation. I mean, Sony just did so much right, and there's so many great games, one after another. But yeah, I guess the nostalgia factor of what people grew up with the PS2. I mean, for me, when I think of the PS2, I think of Grand Theft Auto 3. And I know everybody will probably have a maybe not necessarily an entirely different answer, but there are multiple choice answers to that. But yeah, I'm pretty surprised that the PS2 totally ran away with it. I mean, it's not undeserved, but yeah, I thought the PS4 would get more love in this.
Yeah. I've got PS2 on top, PS4 in a distant second, and then the other three consoles are pretty much all neck and neck. PS3, PS1, and PS5 all around 10 to 12% of the vote. Of course, PS5 isn't a little bit different situation there, still being so new and hard to find. Jonathan, were you surprised by these results?
Similar to Ryan, I wasn't surprised at PS2 winning. I would have thought it would have been closer as well, but I did expect a somewhat decently sized gap. I think there's multiple factors to it. One, as you mentioned, Damon, like the nostalgia factor of it. I think for so many people, especially probably people who are coming back to IGN every day and voted on this poll, probably have like the PS2 was sort of foundational to a lot of their gaming nostalgia in so many ways, and it's hard to separate that when you're voting on something like this. But also, I think to a certain extent, as much as the PS4 has had so many spectacular, amazing games on it, it also has come at a time where unfortunately, sort of console allegiance things tend to happen more often than not. Whereas I feel like at the PlayStation 2 era, it was pretty handily sort of the prize child of gaming at the time, before the 360. And so I think there's just a more universal love out there from that era, is what I would guess.
Yeah. Interesting results last week, at least to me. Before we go, we have a poll for you to vote on for next week. We want to know, where do you plan to play Halo Infinite this fall? As we were just discussing earlier, you're going to be able to play it on Xbox Series X and S, or Xbox One, or on PC, or in the cloud. Let us know. Make sure to vote at IGN.com, and we'll share the results with you next week. And that will do it for this edition of Next Gen Console Watch. Thank you to both Ryan and Jonathan. Thank you to Stella for making a guest appearance today. We'll be back next Friday, same time, 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific, with more PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X news. We'll see you then.